Hi, I'm Marc, host and creator of Get to the Joke, a web series that is a masterclass in the art of stand-up comedy. I hope you find today's episode to be both fun and helpful, and you can help me out by subscribing to my YouTube channel and liking the video, and feel free to drop a comment. I'll be happy to get back to you. Alright, well, let's get to the joke. Hi, I'm Marc, a comedian from Philadelphia.
As you can probably imagine how much going on right now. I can tell you the most exciting thing I had going on this week was my buddy called me up. He was like, "Hey Marc, found this cat outside." So I neutered him, gave him his shots, and I rescued this cat. You want to come over and see my cat? Well, I got nothing better to do. I'll drive 45 minutes to come see this cat. Showed this guy's house, cat's not even there. I go, "Dude, where's this cat go?" He goes, "Oh, it's an outdoor cat." Outdoor cat? Let me get this straight, fella. You found a cat outside, cut its balls off, and put it right back outside. Seems like a pretty raw deal for that cat. Story has another turn. This guy has two other cats. They're both house cats. Now how's an outdoor cat feel? It's like, "Oh, outdoor cat, don't be coming in here. See all this food and air conditioning and love? That's not for you. You get right back outside, you outside cat." Now I know how Cooper Manning feels. Nobody. All right. For those who don't know, Cooper Manning is Eli and Peyton Manning's other brother. There's a reason you never heard about Cooper Manning, because nobody cares about Cooper Manning. He's an outdoor cat.
And today's guests are comedy power couple Missy and Jeremy Hall, two of the most fantastic comedians and people you'll ever meet in this business. They are truly at the top of their game and probably the nicest people you'll ever meet. Missy and Jeremy have a huge array of credits. Missy's debut comedy album, Misrepresentation, made it past the first round of Grammy consideration. She was a finalist in the Big Sky Comedy Festival. She's been in countless comedy festivals, including Burbank Comedy Festival, Big Pine Comedy Festival, and she was in the movie Days of Power with Eric Roberts. And Jeremy has also performed at major clubs all over this country, starting out in DC and now coming up and out here in the Philadelphia area. This was such a fantastic interview. First of all, the first one with two people. I had to conduct a two-person interview at the same time, but they are just the best people, and just their paths into stand-up are both very untraditional. And at the end, I asked Missy a question that I was not expecting the answer to, so you'll have to tune in all the way to the end to get that. You'll hear about the many mitigating circumstances that could have led to negative outcomes in their lives, but they turned those into positives, and fortunately for the rest of the world, we get to hear their stand-up. Enjoy this episode. Please subscribe to this channel. Leave a comment. I will get back to you. And let's get to the episode.
My wife and I have a great relationship. You know what I think is important in a good relationship? It's that you enjoy the same TV shows, right? Because everybody falls asleep watching TV or Netflix or something. You got to find something you both enjoy. My ex-wife, all she wanted to watch was reality shows. Right? I hate reality shows. And here's why. I think they've done a reality show on every idea you could possibly do one on. They've run out of ideas, and now they have gotten completely boring. So, hear me out. Here's my idea. It's a reality show mashup. We're going to take old shows, put them together, make new shows. What if we took Keeping Up with the Kardashians and Pit Bulls and Parolees, put them together and call it Sluts with Mutts? I'd watch that, right? Or what if we took Real Housewives of Orange County and Deadliest Catch? Call it Crappy Bitches. Here's my favorite. My favorite is what if we took Teen Mom and Honey Boo Boo, put them together and call it West Virginia.
Do you know what gets me the most about being 50? I have still never needed algebra. It has never come up, not one time. You know, like I'll picture I'll be 87 on my deathbed, and maybe the Grim Reaper will come in and be like, well, if you can solve for X, we'll let you spend a couple more years with your lovely grandkids, and I'll look at them, they'll be running around wanting to unplug me so they can plug in their iPhone. They'll just take me, it's cool. But there's some good information they could have given me instead of algebra, right, that I could have used. They could have said, hey, Missy, every 3,000 or 4,000 miles, change the oil in your car. Like, that would have been good information to have. Or, hey, Missy, the interest on a credit card, that's not money they give you. Hey, Missy, that thing you do where you, like, cough and laugh without peeing a little? Don't get used to that. It is not fair. So I sneezed when I was leaving the house to come see you fine people. I'm like, son of a bitch. You go back inside, and like, I have to change. And then I see my hair dryer laying there on the bathroom counter, and I'm like, works great. You're welcome. Helpful hints with Missy. You can use that.
Calling Missy G. Hall.
Hey, look at you guys.
Hey, Laura, how you doing?
How are you guys? You guys look great. How you guys doing?
We're good.
That's good. That's good. Thank you so much for doing this. I'm seeing how this goes. I'm getting some comics who I like deeply respect and really like to try this out with me. So I really appreciate you guys taking the time to do this.
I like the idea.
It
Well,
really
thank-
is a cool
Well,
concept.
so how you guys doing with everything? You guys holding in up there okay?
Yeah, it's been the same roller coaster as everybody, but when you consider I'm in the comedy game full time and he's in travel, so
Yeah.
it is not. Ta-da! It's,
So this stimulus check is this is a big deal. The stimulus checks, there's like a petition going around right now for performers, I think. So
Exactly. All of that stuff. You know, it's funny. My whole life, I've always gotten to not pay attention to those kinds of things.
Mhm.
Now I'm deeply immersed in paying attention.
well, so Jeremy, as an employee of a company, did they furlough you or are you
No.
being paid still?
I'm one of very few employees of that company that's salary.
Okay.
Most people are commission.
Thank God.
I've kept my job. I've kept my salary. And I just do anything and everything possible that I can on my end to keep us afloat.
Awesome.
But we have a good owner. We have a good business owner.
Good.
She's very smart, and she's kept us alive.
Okay, awesome. And now is your daughter back with you? Because I know this is her summer, but is she back with you now?
Yeah. She came here. She was here for what, a month and a half?
Yeah.
And it was fine. It was
Yeah.
fine. But she is back in Mechanicsburg. So
Okay.
it was funny when we
Back in
started
school?
No, she is the director of a daycare for the summer that's
Okay.
of course limited opening. I'm
Mhm.
not sure how they're doing it all, but she's doing that.
She's
So-
moving to a very fancy city in 2 weeks.
What's
it's
it?
called Harrisburg,
Harrisburg.
Pennsylvania.
Oh God. Her life took a weird direction. I
Yeah.
want to say she's in preacher school, seminary. She's in
School,
ministry. Okay. So is that happening in the fall or is that up in the air? Does God take a break for coronavirus?
The solid decision's been made on their end either, just like everywhere else. I mean,
Okay.
I guess there's places around the country that have started to make decisions, but
Okay.
I think a lot so up in the air.
Yeah,
Okay.
it's crazy. But we know she's not living here. Again, no offense to her, she's wonderful. But if you're going to be in quarantine and you've only been married for a little less than 2 years, it's kind of nice to get to be alone together.
Now,
Yes.
she came home for a little over a month, and she didn't come alone.
No.
She brought her boyfriend with her.
Who
How's-
we
He
never
had
met.
Oh, and now he's living with you guys.
Yeah.
Yeah, he lived with us for a little over a month. She's 21.
Okay.
He's 31.
Oh, I thought you said he was 21. Oh, okay.
He's 31.
No.
How'd she meet a
And he has-
31-year-old? Online?
At school. At
That's
school.
At school, it's all different ages there.
interesting.
Her
Okay.
favorite roommate is in her 60s. Don't ask me.
So she said, Jeremy, I'm bringing him home, but I need to tell you up front, he's 31 years old and he has a neck tattoo.
Wow, that's quite the. I'm trying to think of a minister with a neck tattoo. He might have found his niche market with the neck
I know.
tattoo.
He's awesome.
And
We
you know
love
what's
him.
funny? We ended up like it was one of those things like, wow, what's he seeing her? Yeah, it was awkward for me because I'm like, I've gotten to go like without a bra and pants for so long,
Yeah.
and then I'm like,
We had to start acting like people.
yeah, that was great.
Now, with both of them being in the seminary or in the ministry, does that make it easier to bring him home with versus like, hey, we're both in Penn State, he's in this fraternity, I'm in this sorority, but that made it a little weirder if the same person?
What was very awkward is that when they were both standing in the kitchen letting me know that they were not having sex. I'm like, blah, blah, I don't want to know. I just,
Luckily, they brought that up when I wasn't home.
yeah, I wasn't going to ask. I don't want to know. I don't want to even think about it as a concept. It was nice of them to tell me.
But I like the month-long stay couldn't have been better.
I got to tell you, like it's great for comedy because it's a fun situation. But in reality, it was just awesome.
Well, awesome. I'm glad she's doing great, especially with everything. I'm sure you're worried and everything, especially she's working at daycare. I'm sure that's a little bit.
Well, that's what I was
with
going
the
to say.
parents
There's a bit
and the
there.
kids.
Yeah, so you worry and you're like, but you know, you'll get to a point, and I know you don't believe me now because you've got a baby, but you will get to a point where you start to just be relieved that she's making her own decisions.
Yeah.
And you can admit it.
Yeah.
I never thought I would feel that way, but it happens.
No, that's reassuring. Well, that's also credit to you. You guys raised a good kid. I'm sure, you know, that's a little bit easier, a little bit peace of mind-er if with that.
Yep.
So I usually start this off. Now, I like I said, I did my research ahead of time. I usually start this off by asking where someone's fascination with stand-up started. Usually I'm thinking early on in their life. With both of you guys, though, you guys have very different ways of starting comedy. And I'm going to link this to the show notes, which is an article from some kind of Maryland newspaper for you, Jeremy, and for you, Missy. It was comedycast.com. Some interview you did with an Irishman over about comedy. And I will link because I don't want to repeat questions that you guys have already had, but I want to elaborate and expand on some things that you guys had said. So for Missy, I'll start with you first. And that is your comedy career was kind of back-asswards for somebody. It seems like mostly you wanted an outlet to perform, and it kind of just like through being a director. Let me get this right. You were a director of like a drama program for a school or for a community.
I directed kids in shows in a local community theater where I was also a performer, and then I directed kids at the school where I worked. So I'd always been in theater, mostly musical theater.
Yes, and someone asked you. Someone was doing. I guess you said it was a one-person play or something. They said, Missy, will you will you do a little bit to warm the crowd up just to bring? Yes.
Yes.
So
they were actually recording a comedian doing a web series.
Okay.
And they asked me, I didn't even know what it meant, but it was at the theater, and I'm like, okay.
So let me ask you, to find the point where someone asks you to do it and then you physically walk up and do it, because you could just been like, this is not what I'm signed up for. I'm an actor. I just want to do acting. I want to help these kids. I want to do my own thing. I'm not here to try to write jokes. So where was that point where you're like, I'm going to try this? What went through your head? Where were you?
It was funny. I remember standing there and just started talking. And the ironic thing is when I first started comedy, I didn't know you had to write jokes. I know it sounds ridiculous, But I just started bantering, and then whatever would come to my mind as like a funny, I would tell a little story or something.
Yeah.
So I didn't do it the right way at all. But that night, it was so funny because I had such a blast. I had such a blast doing it. And then I went away, and then after the main show was over, people came back and like, no, they want to talk to you. People want to see you. I was like, oh, thank you. I mean, so that was my first time, and it was so much fun. And you know what it's like as a comic, you get that
rush.
high.
Yeah.
What was so cool for me is I had been acting and memorizing lines and songs and blocking for so many years to be like, I can just stand out there and talk and people like it. I'm like, why would I not do this?
So there was nothing prepared. You didn't write anything down. You kind of went up there and just like, these are things that are in my head are funny.
I talked about in fact, you know, what's funny is a couple of the things that I talked about, I still have the video. And it was the very first stand-up that I ever did. I think about childbirth a little bit, just some stuff. And I think I had enough stage presence at an actor that it looked more like I knew what I was doing than I actually did.
Okay. Now, was comedy important to you all as like a child, or when you were in college was like, hey, I need to go get this Bill Cosby album, or I need to go get this, you know, whatever happens to be, or, just anybody like Ralphie, anybody so comedy was never something that you had a fascination with, watching The Tonight Show or watching Comedy Central. None of these things appealed to you whatsoever.
No, I was listening to Broadway musical soundtracks. I think I probably could have named two stand-up comedians. I could have named Paula Poundstone. I remember seeing her. And Richard Pryor. And I can remember listening to a Bill Cosby album, but it had never been on my radar.
Okay.
It had never been on my radar. So and still to this day it can be embarrassing because people will talk about comedy history and be like, oh, well, you know, so and so, and I bet you were inspired by so and so and so and so, and I'm like, I don't have any.
Now, once you become a comedian, I know you're very busy with your own show schedule, but have you gone out and sought out comedy shows and watched other, not local comedians, I'm talking about like headliners or anything like that? Like national headliners or like famous comedians.
I've watched that I truly is Amy Madigan. I've watched, now that I know more what I'm doing, I'd like to watch other people that have been doing it for a lot longer. I haven't really gone to see anybody live, but if I've seen it on Netflix or whatever. Now, before, I will tell you, I did go see Jim Gaffigan live and George Carlin. I saw George Carlin last show. I saw him twice once. I saw him at University of Delaware, and I saw him at the Tower Theater literally like a month before he died. That was before comedy was even a thought in my head.
Okay. Now,
those were the...
Oh, sorry. Go ahead. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to cut you off.
Oh, no. But so, I mean, I knew I liked it, but I never had sought it out. Again, I was so into music. And I was a mom. Yeah. Remember, I did all of this. When I first started comedy, my kid was like 12 or 13. So all of those years, I had been in mom world, kid music world, and all of that. Hadn't even been on my radar.
Okay. Now, Jeremy, very different set of circumstances to start in comedy. Your thing was you were addicted to drugs for 10 years, and then as part of your sobriety, you got into comedy. So,
how do you know?
I did my research. I'm not going to come just do this.
Yeah, so when I got clean and sober, I told myself, I'm the opposite of Missy. I grew up loving comedy. Okay. At a young age. My dad introduced me to it. There was even a career day at school one year, and I had this little puppet of Alf. Do you remember Alf?
Yes.
And I just went with the puppet of Alf and was a ventriloquist. And it was... So yeah, I always loved comedy. And so I told myself when I got clean and sober, what am I going to do with, what am I going to do like that's going to be different? And I was like, I've always wanted to try this. I'm going to give it a shot. Okay. Went to, Riot Act, which was a comedy club in D.C. at the time. And it was my first time. I signed up for an open mic. I didn't invite any friends or anybody I know. I didn't tell anybody. And I just took the train down there and I showed up. And right before I got called on stage, I almost chickened out and ran out of there. Oh, wow. Because I was that nervous. But I got up there, I did my 5 minutes, and when it was over, it was exhilarating. I was so happy that I had done it, and I got some laughs.
Yeah.
My first time, laughed.
Well, so now, as an addict, and this is a lot of pressure, like putting yourself very exposed in an environment where there's a lot of judging and that kind of stuff. Were you worried at all that this might, like, because it seems like it was almost pretty immediate that you got yourself sober and you started comedy. It wasn't like a phase, there wasn't like a phase in or anything like that. It seemed like it was two things pretty close together.
There was a few months. I had a few months of sobriety. And by a few months, I mean about like 8 to 10 months sobriety before I just jumped in. So yes, I had been clean and sober for a little while before I did it, to the point where I was ready to take the next step in my clean living life. Like, what do I want to do? I'm going to try this. I always wanted to. Let me give this a shot.
Okay. Now, going back to when you were a kid and your dad was promoted comedy, was very into comedy and kind of got you on there. Were you funny? Were you were you a funny kid? Were you a class clown?
Yeah.
Were you funny among friends?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. I don't take anything seriously. Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, was there points before you started? I think I saw back in 2012 is when you started. Was there points where you were like very close to getting up on stage and doing comedy prior to 2012, or was it okay? Nothing. You didn't even. Did you go to comedy clubs just to scout it out and see?
I did.
Okay.
I lived in New York for a few years. I went to the Comedy Cellar a few times.
Okay.
I've been to a few other comedy clubs, but I was a drummer for many years in the same band.
Okay.
That's what I was in New York. So music was always my thing, and I had never even thought about actually performing comedy, even though I loved comedy.
Okay. Do you still drum?
No.
Oh.
I just dropped it. It's funny because in my sobriety, I gained stand-up comedy, and I completely lost music.
So I've seen you perform quite often. You don't do any jokes about addiction. I think you might reference it in a joke or something as part of like a throwaway, but you don't there's no jokes where there's an emotional attachment. I mean, I didn't realize that you had been addicted for so long until I read this. First of all, what kind of drugs were you addicted to?
Oh, it was mostly pain pills and cocaine.
Okay. And do you know was it just, were you like a drummer on the road and these were just things that happened as part of that lifestyle, or was it just?
No, it actually started before that. So I was bartending in like right when I turned 20.
Okay.
And that scene is where I really picked it up.
Okay.
The restaurant scene, it runs rampant, and I picked it up and it turned into a serious issue.
Wow. Okay. Well, congratulations on being sober, I guess, for 8 years now.
Right.
Or close to 8 years.
It'll be
Right?
10
It'll be
years.
10
years.
in
Oh, wow.
September.
Oh, wow. Congrats. That's awesome. Is it true that for someone to be a comic, and especially a decent enough comic to at least be getting paid and doing this, do comics need to be fucked up to bring a sense of good material?
I've thought about this many times since I've had this discussion with a lot of comedians, especially early on when I started doing comedy. And though we each have been through trauma in our life, I don't know if the answer is necessarily yes.
Do you know what I think? Because the trauma that I've experienced never even comes out on stage.
Yes.
Like I'll be more than happy to tell my life story, but it's not in my jokes. And a lot of it was happening while I was doing comedy. But I don't think that led me to be a comedian. You know what I think? Good comics have to be honest. And I think trauma might lead people to use comedy as an honest way to express themselves. Okay, so I don't think they have to be fucked up, but I think they have to be honest and authentic.
And I think a requirement for being a good comedian is to not care what people think of you personally.
Okay.
You gotta have the freedom to speak from your heart and be honest.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna say. So when these people that have been, have people that have died, things like that, if they can just be honest with the way they're presenting themselves to the world, even if they're not talking about those topics. I've seen all of the comics that you just mentioned, and they all come across as very authentic people, authentic entertainers. And I think that the common thread with any trauma is that when people have adjusted to that, if their flip side is them being braver as people,
Okay.
they become good performers.
That makes sense. And Missy, going to you, and I apologize, Jeremy, because I started out with a question, and maybe we'll see how far Missy wants to talk about this, and then Jeremy will come back to the original question with why don't you talk more about overcoming addiction on stage, which is, Missy, you talk about in some of these interviews, like there were some bad things that happened to me, and I think I know what you're talking about. I think it has to do with prior relationships and stuff that you've been through with prior marriages. Do you want to talk about any of that, or do you just want to just talk about?
Oh, it's fine.
Okay.
You know, the first one wasn't even that interesting.
Okay.
I got married when I was 30. I was pregnant, but I had a full-time job with the state. Like, I didn't have to get married.
Yeah.
But I was in kind of a vulnerable state, and I kind of knew it was a troubled relationship. I kind of knew he was controlling,
Mm-hmm.
but I like, okay, so I did it, and it was a big mistake.
Mm-hmm.
And I had some bad years. People used to equate my life to that movie, oh God, the one with Julia Roberts, where if the cans aren't lined up neatly, I forget what that's called. Yeah, I forget. But anyway, super controlling guy. And then when I had a kid with him, and I wasn't going to let my daughter grow up in those circumstances.
Mm-hmm.
Fairly normal. But it was a lot, and it was after I got out of that, and that was probably about 5 years ago, of being kind of isolated and controlled and wondering how I could possibly be a person that could let myself have that kind of relationship, because it was never me. I was very embarrassed, but I got out of it. And that's when I started performing again as an actor, singer, all right? And then cut to, I married, and to this day, I can tell you Paul was a wonderful guy. Again, I didn't necessarily feel the pull to get married, but I kind of got talked into it. Our kids loved each other. They're like, when are you going to marry my dad? Blah, blah, blah. I'm like, you know what? This feels fine, right? The kids are getting along. This is good. He's a good man. He did it, and it was fine. But unfortunately, there were some issues of PTSD and some bipolar and some psychotic disorders that had not come out, that suddenly blew up. It was very scary, and it was very sudden. And I mean, it was kind of like stuff in a bad movie. We're talking of police and him having to be committed, and me having to get out of the house and find another place to live with my daughter. And all of this happened. I had been working full-time as a teacher. He had a really good job, and comedy was starting to go well for me. And he's like, you know what, you should quit and just do substitute teaching so you can focus on comedy. So I did, and then he lost his mind. So I'm jobless, have a place to live by the grace of friends who had places, but it was a big deal.
Yeah, no, that sounds like a huge deal. Yeah, and so you both talk about this with me, which is, thank you for sharing, but is there a reason that it hasn't translated to the stage? Is it you have enough material here, and when you need to dig deeper, then that might come out? Is that what might happen? Okay.
Yes.
I have a plan. You go.
I haven't dug deep enough. I'll be the first one to tell you, honestly, I haven't dug deep enough. There's always going to be self-inflicted trauma with my trauma. I treated people horribly. I was a monster. There's a lot of issues I have internally with myself as far as that phase of my life went. And maybe I haven't fully come to terms with it enough that I will openly write and discuss it on stage. I do touch on it a bit in a few of my, and I don't do it every time I perform. I have to be feeling it in order to do it. But I know the day is coming where a lot of this is going to come out and get on stage more than it has been. And I don't know when it's going to happen, but I absolutely know it's going to happen. Okay,
well, that's good. And so I will ask, have you guys sought out therapy, and maybe that's the reason why it hasn't hit the stage? You're able to work it out over here, and that way you don't need to work it out over here. Is that something that, have you guys done therapy around it, and that way it's able to get out there without, okay. I was just curious to see how that is. It's my own thing.
Yeah, I haven't. Again, when all of this was happening, I was trying to carve out a comedy career, finish up my teaching career. I was a mom to a teenager, stepmom to another teenager whose dad had just lost his mind. I had no health insurance, had no money. Like, No, I did not do therapy. I had electricity. That was awesome. That was, I also had, I have a wonderful support system of friends and things of that nature. And not that I'm anti-therapy. If somebody said, hey, Missy, we'll sponsor you and you can go to therapy. Sure, who wouldn't do that, right? But I never did.
And just to make it clear, I had my own therapy being in rehab.
Yeah.
So, yes, I have gone through, just not with a therapist. It was drug counseling.
Yeah, okay. All right, well, thank you, guys. So my question that I'd like to ask is, are the stuff you tell on stage real experiences that happened to you or real experiences that you've observed? I feel like we're both you, it's stuff that's actually happened to you, especially with you, Missy. And I especially want to talk about the gynecologist joke and how that materialized, and we'll get into that a little bit. But how much of your stuff that you write, of your whole set, when you guys do a headlining set somewhere, what percentage of that is real stuff, and how much of that stuff is you observed it happen to somebody else, but now it's your story, or it's just maybe an observational joke, or it's just something that you created to kind of fit maybe or transition to something else that happened? What percentage is real versus what percentage is fabricated or exaggerated maybe?
I can't think of anything that isn't mine.
Okay. I'm not talking about like stolen jokes. I'm just saying, I'm just saying like, okay.
No, but what I'm saying is, it's a good question because I've never thought about it and I'm trying to think. Because, a lot of times I'll tell a joke and somebody will tell me a story that relates to it. And I'm like, oh, wow, I should weave that in. And I just never have.
I think everything's been your experience.
Everything's been my experience.
Mine's 100% mine.
Yeah.
For my brand of comedy, for what I do, I take the truth and I twist it or I bend it a little.
Right.
To try to get the maximum amount of laughs. None of it's a lie. It's just kind of, you take it and you just put it on an extreme side.
Yeah.
So, but it's all stuff that's happening.
But like,
has to do with
like every story I tell has actually happened. Things. And that, and that gets back when you were asking about is the other stuff ever going to come up in comedy? One of the reasons that I haven't is because of the other people it involves.
Yeah.
So I'd have to figure out a way to do funny that isn't being mean to somebody who had a mental illness and that doesn't affect his child that's still going to hear. Do you see what I'm saying?
Yeah, no, I understand.
I plan on I'm writing and I'm doing some motivational speaking geared towards women where I can tell my story in a funny way without hurting anybody else, but it won't probably be stand-up worthy. It'll be more, hey ladies, you can keep going.
Okay.
That's
awesome.
So I do have a plan on getting it out there, but I want to do it in a way that doesn't hurt any of the people involved.
Okay. Now, when you so Missy, with your brand is very happy and very just this bubbly personality. Do you think that you will talk? I mean, you say like I eventually will talk about that. Will you talk about that even though it might go against this brand? If you start going a little dark, well, I mean, I know you've acted in like Days of Power as a dark film, but that's not a real version of yourself. Will you violate the brand of? Not, I won't say violate. Will you kind of maybe dial back the happy brand to talk about some of the darker moments and stand up, or will it maybe always be motivational speaking, or maybe like a one woman play or something like that?
I'm actually planning a one woman show.
Okay.
That will do a deeper dive.
Okay.
The brand for my stand-up, because what makes me laugh and giggle and relate to people that are out for a comedy club for just a good time, they don't need to hear, I mean, and let me tell you, some comics do it really, really well, and I admire them. It's just, I started off on this bubbly, like, mom kind of woman thing that I think I'll stick with brand, with comedy, but hopefully with other projects, I'll be able to weave them together.
Okay.
That's where it lifts head now anyway.
Okay, cool. So, Jeremy, you talk about your divorce, lack of sex.
This is not my first marriage. Has anybody in here been through a divorce? Oh, yeah. He's like, oh, yeah. He knows. Divorce isn't fun, but sometimes it just has to happen, right? Yeah, it just has to happen. You didn't divorce her, right? Because that'd be weird. Okay. Awesome. But it is, right? Like sometimes marriages just don't work years of marriage, I was down to sex just once a month, and I was lucky if she showed up for that. So I told her, I was like, look, once a month is not going to do it. I'm going to need sex more often than once a month. She told me that's fine, no problem. If you start being a little bit nicer to me, start paying me a little bit more attention, we can have sex more often. I was like, screw it, once a month is fine. There's only so much I can do.
Tell me, first of all, Missy talks about staying away from maybe bringing somebody else's issues to the stage. Your experience seems to be a lot different with your ex-wife. Does she know that you tell this joke? Has she heard it through the grapevine that there's a joke about?
We don't have communication.
Okay.
So I have no idea.
Okay.
I have no idea.
Well, so tell me how that joke started. I'm assuming you talked about it, so you know it's real. We know it's a real thing that happened that led to a divorce.
Yep.
Were you divorced and then started stand-up? Or you started stand-up and then you got divorced?
No, I started stand-up first and then got divorced.
Okay, so you were both married to other people and started stand-up. Okay.
One was not the cause of the other.
Okay. This makes it a little more interesting because now you're married to her, and does this joke come out of frustration? Was this a way to kind of nudge her? Like you didn't want to directly talk to her about the lack of sex, but I'm going to put it in my joke and hopefully she hears it. Or was it joke not written when you guys were married?
It was not written.
Oh, okay. Okay.
It was written after the divorce.
Okay. So then tell me what made you put pen to paper or finger to cell phone for that joke versus, because that's really the only time you talk about your ex-wife. Correct me if I'm wrong. It's pretty much, yeah, okay.
It's probably the only time you'll ever hear me. No ill will, but it didn't work out.
Yeah.
But as you know, when I met Missy and I found out what true love really is, I needed something in my head to compare what I thought love was. And so it led to, a lot of times you think of what you thought life was supposed to be before versus now. That's one of the first things that came up. Holy crap, people that love each other have sex often. That's a thing. I couldn't. I'm getting laid all the time. I was like, oh my God. So,
I've never seen Jeremy happier. So did you write this down, or is this like, I'm just going to go to the stage and I'm going to work this out on stage? Are you a writer down guy? Because you sent me some set lists, but you never sent me a page out of the joke book. So tell me your writing process.
I don't write stuff down word for word. What I do is I get the idea. I write just a little side note, like
on paper, cell phone. How do you get?
Paper.
Okay.
On paper. That's why I've got like 20 little sheets of paper in my desk drawer that I'm constantly scribbling and trying to find room to write on.
Right.
Not like I'm ever going to know where I left off or anything. But just the idea of writing it down helps lock it in my brain. I have a bad memory.
Yeah.
So just
horrible memory.
So I write it on paper, and that just helps keep it in my brain. I don't really have to read the paper. I just have to write it down somewhere. And so I know what I want to say in my head. And the cool thing is that, being married to another comedian, I can get it in my head, run downstairs. Missy, you got to hear this. Tell me what you think. And so I immediately can tell the joke to somebody and already start working out how I want to say it so that I don't have to write it word for word on a paper. I just need a little footnote.
So this is a great question. So you guys do work out material with each other, or does one of you work out more on the other one and the other one kind of more keeps everything in the drawer?
I cannot practice telling a joke to save my life.
Okay.
It is painful. If I say, Jeremy, do you think it's funny? And I'll try. Sorry.
It's all right.
I'll try to tell it. I can't practice. I can't actually experiment with a joke. I can just tell him premises. If I tell him premises, he'll go, yes. But if I were to try to actually, truly work out material, it goes horrible.
Okay.
So Jeremy can kind of say it as if he's going to say it on stage.
Okay. So Jimmy, let me ask you, are you ever worried that a joke that you like and you tell Missy and Missy goes, and then you shove it, and then maybe you pull it out at a show just because you're running out of time or something, and it works. Is there anything weird with that, has that ever happened where you're like, the other person feels a lot of pressure for the material that might get in the trash can?
I can't think of a time when that happened and it actually worked. I can think of quite a few times where I said, Missy, what do you think about that? She's like, I think it still needs some work. And I'm like, screw what she says. And I go on stage and I do it. And I get crickets, man. And I'm like, damn it, I should have listened to my wife.
Okay.
She's there to help me and I don't listen.
But you got to remember, I had a lot of years before comedy as a director, right, of other performers. So I have kind of a knack and an innate sense of like, yes, that's going to work. That's not going to work. Or I know him well enough to know it's not done yet.
Okay.
Because,
Yeah.
So it's not even the wife brain. It's
Yeah.
more like former director brain.
Okay. So
When we're there, then I just laugh at him with wife brain.
So Jeremy, the lack of sex and the divorce joke, does that, you said you write down maybe, okay, that maybe that's all you wrote, just that one thing, lack of sex, and then you go on stage with it.
I write on a note card, divorce.
Okay.
And I know what to talk about.
So you go on stage, is that how you work it out then? And that's how are you self-editing as you go on stage?
A little bit.
Okay.
A little bit. And I'll tell you, one of my flaws is I will come up with a concept for a joke. I'll try it on stage. If it doesn't work, I may just abandon it.
Okay.
Instead of working on it for the next time. And that's a serious flaw of mine that I'm trying to work on. If I don't get a good laugh out of it the first time, there's a good chance I scrap it without putting more work into it. And
Okay.
That's a terrible habit to have.
So I assume if you were to send me this joke about your divorce from whenever you did it for the first time, and then what you sent me in that clip, that joke is greatly different because it's all just being done on stage. There's not,
Yes.
It's probably a much longer joke. So how do you edit then? So do you record yourself when you tell a joke?
I do record myself. I don't do it as much as I've seen most comedians do it.
Mhm.
I should. I don't like listening to myself or watching myself, which is a problem we all have.
Right.
But for me, the things that change, the timing will change. I will get to the meat of it, so I will cut out the fat that doesn't need to be there if it's too wordy, which Missy helps a lot with that too. She'll let me know what part's too wordy. And I just know from the last time I performed it, hey, when I leave out this part, it seems to go better. Hey, when I throw this tagline on it, it seems to do better. So yes, it's a lot of self-editing from stage, not on paper.
You talk about that your memory is not the greatest, so how do you edit and make sure that if there's 6 points over here and 3 work, how do you remember for the next time to do those 3 and not to do all 6? If you're not writing anything down.
Marc, just like me, you're a man. You have selective memory. I want to remember. And for me, that's important enough that my brain retains it.
Okay.
Missy tells me what she did yesterday while I was at work. I love her to death, but it won't stick in my head.
I just memorized Jeremy's phone number. We've been married for almost 2 years. I get it.
So it's just that comedy is so important to me. What I do on stage is so important that I don't have a problem remembering that.
Okay. So how did you know then that this joke was done? This specific joke? How do you know, like, it's baked, it's out of the oven, it's ready to serve? Or is it always a work in progress? Is it 3 months from now, you'll go back to that cue card that says divorce on it and be like, I need to put this tag on here or something. I need to look at this and focus on that joke more. Do you do that?
If something to mind that I thought I could add on to it, I have no problem doing that. But I'm completely satisfied with that divorce joke exactly how it is because it's quick, to the point, gets the laugh. I can move on to the next thing. I've trimmed all the fat off of it that I've needed to.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you, Jeremy. But the question for both you guys, do you guys have a writing routine? Every day, do you guys sit down between 1 and 2 and write jokes? Is there some kind of, we got to at least write something every day, or is there any routine to your writing, or is it just as it comes? Okay.
I was about to, I'd love to think of where I could be right now if I actually did that. I've never really sat down. Like I showed you, I have a notebook where I jot down ideas. The only reason I have anything written down actually is because of festivals or things that I've had to do where I had to plan a set. Before that, I've never even planned a set. Like when I go into doing, especially if you have a long show, like if I have an hour, I have no idea what I'm gonna say because you've got plenty of time to make friends with the audience and banter and do whatever and just get in. What you'll see me write down is if I've got to work clean.
Okay.
I want to make sure, like, okay, what works and how can I reword it? That I will physically sit down and write out differences.
Okay.
From how I normally tell it to something that I could tell, like, in a high school or in a nursing home, right?
I see.
That's really the only time I write anything out specifically. Everything else is usually just, oh my gosh, and I'll write down a note. Like, for instance, I was just telling Jeremy, I was like, oh, people always brag about having rescue dogs. Shouldn't used cars be called rescue cars? And I'm like, should I write a bit about rescue cars? And I'll just write, so in my phone I have a note that says rescue cars.
Okay.
Funny thing is, here's the funny thing. That's all I hear from her, is she tells me the concept. I'm like, yep, that's a great concept. All of a sudden, she'll be at a show like a couple weeks later, and she just goes off on it, and it works. Nothing's been run by me, and I'm just like, what the hell?
I don't write anything down till after I've done it, get ready for another thing.
Okay. So let's get into the gynecologist joke.
What is our least favorite doctor's appointment? The gynecologist. Absolutely. Just out of curiosity, has any woman in this room ever made it close enough to the end of the table on the first scoot down? No woman in the history of gynecology has ever made it close enough to the end of the table on the first scoot down. No, it's always like, no, a little more, honey. No, scoot down. No, come on, scoot down. A little bit more, dear, scoot down. I'm like, dude, my hoo-ha is on your face. You are sitting on a stool with wheels. You stood up. I can't believe I got a pedicure for this shit, right? The minute they take out that speculum, jams it in there, it's like, is that comfortable? All I know is an eye cough once, you're gonna lose an eye.
First of all, is that how it's labeled in your book? You put gynecologist?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And like the Vimeo files and everything, it's like the gynecologist. That's it. Yeah.
Okay, so you obviously, since both you guys mentioned that these are based on real experiences, you're at the gynecologist. How do you get, so obviously all this stuff's happening and you think, oh, this is great for a bit. How do you develop the ideas and then get it down in this notebook because you're at a gynecologist office? Or do you whip out your phone in the middle of the exam and it's like,
Oh yeah, no, I'll remember, usually I'm laughing about it or I'm at a point now where I'll ask either the doctor or my gynecologist questions when I'm there. Like the scoot down part.
Yeah.
I'm doing that and I asked her, I'm like, is it just me? And she's like, no, nobody can make it down on the first try. And I'm like, okay, so that's a thing. Then it becomes a joke.
So you just remember this and then you get into your car after the exam's over.
That I didn't even have to write down. That I just started talking about.
Okay. All right. And so how different is that joke from the clip that we see and from what I've heard of it from when you first started doing it? Do you also self-edit like Jeremy does on stage, or do you write down this part works, this part doesn't work? No writing.
No, I just play with it on stage until it feels good. And that one had a lot of add-ons because I don't remember if I don't think the bit about the transvaginal mesh and the transvaginal ultrasound and the gynecologist were even together. Like I think gynecologist early appointments came after I had done another thing, and then I wove them all together when I talked about the trans. So it became.
I'm impressed.
But I never sat down and did that on purpose. I just do it on stage.
I'm just impressed that you guys can like self-edit. I have to go down, I listen to it and I write down, like I put an X over the crowd that doesn't work, or I put a check mark next to it if it does work. It's so.
But that's what you're supposed to do.
I don't know if you're supposed to do any of it. So I mean, I think all this works. I think I'm just trying. This is what I'm fascinated by. I'm fascinated by how the comics write the material. So you guys pretty much have a similar writing method. You're just jotting down a word or a few words, and then you go up on stage. And now when you go on stage, is that new joke? So the gynecologist joke not performed yet. The divorce joke not performed yet. Is that in your pocket? That cue card to whip out?
He'll have notes. I've never taken notes on stage.
Okay.
I'm a snob about that because of my years as an actor.
Mm-hmm.
That's my perception.
I don't look at my notes on stage, but you can bet I've got them in my pocket.
Okay.
Because I just feel right having them in my pocket. I won't pull them out, I won't look at them, but I know they're there, and for some reason that gives me comfort.
Okay. Okay.
Now, one of the most important things, though, for our writing styles and figuring out like what works and what doesn't work, is we do a lot of shows together. That ride home in the car is we analyze.
Okay.
So we have, sometimes we have, 5-6 hour rides home from gigs. Sometimes it's just an hour and a half.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes it's 20 minutes. We'll analyze each other's sets.
Okay. So then, okay, so that's part of it. That lets you, but how much is, because you guys are very active on social media with putting up funny concepts, is that also something that might become an idea? Do you guys put something on Facebook and then see if likes and comments will equal this to be a stage joke at some point? Or no?
Yes.
That's just social media and just lives on there
For
only?
me,
For him, yes, and for I love getting the funny stuff out there, and now because of the pandemic and we're not out there as people, I've been trying to create more content and think of it in different ways. So I didn't used to think of it as stuff for stage before, but I'm starting to.
Okay.
A lot.
So, first of all, with the pandemic, have you guys, I know I saw your schedule online, and you had a lot of virtual shows on, but have you guys performed live yet since March 15th or whatever?
I've gotten to do 2 shows. We got to do one in a theater together.
Okay.
So each comic had their own microphones. The audience was in masks and spread out. It was
the very first live comedy show to come back in the state of
in
Delaware.
the state of Delaware. It was the first. It was.
Was this Keith? Was this the Keith thing in Milton?
Yes.
Yes. Okay, I was there, so I know that's a pretty. Now, okay, so going back to the final part, I'm talking about performing your bits, and so Jeremy, the divorce bit, you and Missy have similar stage presence to an extent. You're both very out in front. You're both center stage. You don't hang back. You're not a Chappelle that sits on a stool. Tell me a little bit about. I feel like this probably question is more for Missy than Jeremy, but do you guys play somewhat of a character on stage? Because I know you, like Missy, you're very nice and outgoing, but there's almost a more exaggerated version when you're on stage. You're this very bubbly personality to an extreme. I mean, but by no offense, I mean, you're great both on and off stage, but I almost feel like you are, like your hand motions are exaggerated and all this stuff. Is there a consciousness decision to put your hands certain ways, to stand certain ways, that you write down, like, oh my gosh, I flicked my hair in this one bit, make sure I'm going to write down, flick my hair at this punchline? Okay.
I have absolutely no idea what I'm doing.
Okay.
And it was funny because people would give me feedback and they're like, wow, your movements are so precise. I'm like, that is a complete accident. I have never planned any of that. I think what it comes from is having been a performer for so long, doing musical theater. I think my body just does it. But I'll watch video of myself. I'm like, I didn't know I did. Like, I don't have any sense of it at all.
Okay. And Jeremy, same question. Like, is there a deliberate to the way that you perform on stage? I know a lot of your jokes are self-deprecating about your height. Is there I forget if there was a show that you and I did together, and I don't know if you told me to keep the microphone up so that you would do this motion. Is there a consciousness to the way that you deliver jokes, and specifically with your height?
Okay, first of all, one of the worst things that I do is I pan the room.
Right?
Oh my God, yes.
When I'm performing, I can't tell you how many times Missy, a club owner, or veteran comedians like, why do you keep turning your head so much? I want everybody to make sure that they can hear what I'm saying. It sucks. And when I see it on camera, I'm like, oh my gosh, delete.
Yeah.
But for me, no character really comes out. It's just me. But I don't know how it is for other comedians, but as soon as I get on stage, I remember to keep my energy up. Energy is very important to me. So, when I come out, I'm coming out swinging. And it builds a confidence that lasts throughout my set.
Yeah. Now, you guys both dress very nicely when you guys perform. You don't walk out there like in jeans and a t-shirt, you know, like how I'm dressed now. Missy, you're always dressed up with your hair done, and Jeremy, I think you wear a blazer most of the time when you perform. You know, so what? Tell me about the outfit. Tell me about the importance of looking good up there versus just like kind of like comics that roll out of bed with a hoodie on or like maybe like a zip-up jacket kind of deal.
Well, let me just tell you this. We can put all of that on Missy. Because before I met Missy, I performed in jeans, sneakers, and a t-shirt. And now when we go to the show, I'm like, honey, I'm going to wear my brand new white Pumas or my brand new blue Adidas. She goes, okay, you're a professional. Put on your big boy shoes. So now I wear dress shoes, jeans, and a blazer.
I'm like,
just so I don't piss her off.
I'm like, you have to wear your big boy shoes. You're a grown up. You're a grown ass man. Dress like it.
But it depends on the venue.
Right. And I don't mean, I'm too old to be super casual on stage. You know what I mean? Like if I were to wear on stage what I typically wear around the house, which is jeans and t-shirts and stuff, I would look like I was trying to be young.
Okay.
There's a difference between performing that way and as a person, that's me, jeans, t-shirts all the time. As a performer, I spiff it up just a little to acknowledge the fact that I know how old I am.
Okay. Like, is there material that you guys will not touch? Let's say you guys come with a great joke about this subject. No, whether it's race or sex or drugs or what your kids. Is there certain stuff that you won't touch? Maybe like I have a great idea. This works for this comic. I'll give it to them.
Right.
Yeah. Here's the thing. I don't touch politics. I don't touch race. And it's not because I've made a conscious effort not to. It's not my style. It's not who I am.
Okay.
So, yeah, off limits, but it's only off limits because it's not my thing. I don't discuss it in real life either.
Okay. Same.
Yeah, I politics. Again, when you see the kinds of stuff that we joke about, politics don't really fit into where I'm going, and I am not comfortable at all making a joke about race.
Okay.
At all.
Okay. Fair enough.
And for me, self-deprecating humor, a lot of the laughs that I get is because I can tell my ridiculousness to a group of people who have their own ridiculousness.
Right.
And the fact that I'm willing to admit mine makes them able to laugh because they know they've got other things in their life that kind of suck too.
Yeah.
So it would never be my style to pick on something that doesn't have to do with me personally.
Exactly.
Okay.
Exactly.
So let's talk. I'm going to go back into your jokes a little bit. It seems mostly with Missy, although Jeremy, you would joke that pertains to Missy about a lot of your subject material is very cognizant of your age and being a mother. How big of a factor does your age come into comedy? Not so much with material, but like I know for me, I'll be 35 in a month, and there are times where I'm performing on shows and there'll be a 24-year-old who's just killing it, and I have these regrets about starting so late doing comedy. I know both you guys. I was like, man, if I had just done this when I left college, you know, where would I be now versus, you know, I've only done it for 5 years, 6 years. Do you guys have any? I know both of you guys started later doing stand-up than probably the median age of a stand-up comedian, especially in the East Coast, I would say. How much does your age come into your mind? Does it motivate you more? Do you see like, oh, these young kids are getting more stage time in bigger clubs. I need to be out there more. I need to produce more content. I need to write more. Does any of that come in via age?
I've been letting it kind of flow naturally because I kind of stumbled into comedy and it's been going well. And the only thing that, you know, people say, well, it takes 10 years to find your voice. I'm like, yeah, I started this in my 40s. I don't have 10 years to find my voice. We've got to do this now, right? So I've had the pressure of going, no, we got to call this ready because I'm not waiting till I'm 60. you know? But in general, I have found that comparison is really like a thief of joy, and it can really So I have just kind of kept my little blinders on and just forged where I fit. And that's pretty much what I've been doing. If I spend time paying that much attention to what other comics are doing, or who's getting stage time, or who's younger than me, or prettier, or any of that stuff, I don't allow space for that in my head. I just kind of go forward. And I also think in some ways it's worked to my advantage, because I don't think there are a ton of me out there. And there's some, I've met some, I work with women, the women of a certain age comedy group and stuff, but usually if you say, there's Dennis, if you say, the middle-aged, the white lady with the curly hair, she's older, you have more of a chance of figuring out that it's me than you do naming every 20-year-old you've seen, right?
Yeah.
So it works against me, but I do try not to let it get in my head.
Okay. So when you tell the joke about and what's going to happen is the clips you send me, I'm going to drop them here. So when I say the paramedic joke.
27. She's still picking out her panties based on what that guy thinks of them. You remember that? Picking out, are these cute? Are these hot? Do they think my butt looks good? Right? I'm 50. I pick out my underwear based on what the paramedics might think. Moment to make an impression after your heart attack, right? And you're gonna take a look and be like, oh, well, she's kind of cute, maybe a good time, but clearly very responsible and an excellent mother. That's what I 27. She's still pretending to like things like football, blowjobs. Anymore. I like naps. End of list. That's it. 27. One day you're gonna put your hand on your hip and you're gonna be like, when did the front of me start migrating to the back of me? The topography changes, and from there you're like, oh, you look fine. Like, if you trust me, if I were to take off any of this, it's like a melting snowman. These aren't even my boobs. I'm just wearing so much Spanx under here. This is like my muffin top. My belly button is right here. And doctor's appointments get weird. They do, right? And it used to just be normal. Now, after you turn 45, everybody wants to look up your butt. I don't know what they think they're going to find. And then you walk in there like, oh, Miss Drinkowitz, your chart looks great, but we are going to need to do a rectal exam. I'm like, well, okay, but, I'm just here to get my teeth cleaned. But it's true, in the past 4 years, I have had more fingers up my ass than I did the entire time I spent at the University of Delaware.
That joke has primarily that joke can only be told by someone, a 20-year-old can't come up with the maturity to tell a joke like that. So walk me through that joke where you're talking about underwear, you're talking about the muffin top, you're talking about the melting snowman, very self-deprecating. And then Jeremy, I want you to chime in because you tell about being married to an older comic and how these jokes genesis, and then kind of how we did it with the gynecologist and the divorce joke. Kind of walk me through the origin. And then when we see this clip and how you formulate the joke and put the ingredients in and edit it and all that stuff, because it seems to be multiple jokes within one joke.
For me, one of the things that has shocked me is that I as I started coming, like I still feel the same in my head as I always did, right? Then it's true. I look down at my arms. I'm like, that's my mom's hand. You know, that joke happened because it's true. And then I laugh because I can remember being 20, 25 and looking at older women and going, oh yeah, you know, I guess she didn't moisturize enough, or you know, when I would spend all of my extra money at Victoria's Secret to impress some guy, I'm like, I will never not be in perfect shape, and I will never not wear sexy underwear. And like those idealistic things, and it makes me laugh when I realize how ridiculous that is. And it's fun to share it because it's fun to tell it to women that are younger than I am. I'm like, honey, this is gonna happen to you. Like we all think it's not going to happen to us, and it happens to all of us.
Yeah.
And it makes me laugh because I really didn't think it was going to happen. I really thought that it wasn't going to happen.
But the joke is perfect because you talk about the paramedic. How did you get paramedic? How with all, I mean, obviously you see your underwear and there's something there, but then you hit it with the paramedic. Where did that come from? Did you see a paramedic or something when you were writing a joke or something? Okay.
Did. I had, and this was 9 years ago, I had chest pains and some numbing in my arm. So I went to the walk-in clinic, and I was fed what they call PVCs. And they called the ambulance from the clinic, and the paramedics had to come to take me to the hospital. And I did not have a heart attack. But yes, that's what it was, because they were undressing me in the ambulance, and I remember being very cognizant of the fact that I had on like mom underwear and not sexy underwear.
So are you formulating a joke in the back of an ambulance? Like, are you like, this is joke worthy?
Yeah, I did. This was, in fact, my CD had been released at that time, but I hadn't done that joke yet. That was when I very first started, because remember, I released a CD before I ever performed before I ever did 5 minutes.
Misrepresentation is before you started doing stand-up? That's because is that the CD you're talking about, misrepresentation?
Misrepresentation was my first show I ever did.
Oh my gosh, that's incredible. Now that I heard the comedy cast, I don't think it was mentioned. Was it mentioned? Okay, wow, that's crazy to think about how good that is. I mean, she barely does stand up, and now is nominated for a Grammy. It's not fair how this all works.
It's weird. But no, and I've changed a lot as a comic since then, but that was the first show I ever did, and I'd never done a 5 minute. They just said, hey, you think you can do 90 minutes? And I was like, well, sure, because I didn't know any better. Which
Who's
is good,
they?
right?
The venue? Because that record's released for Realize.
The record label.
How did you get a record label having never done comedy?
Because they are the ones that saw me as an actor and asked me to just warm up the crowd at the theater where I worked from. They were there recording her, and then wanted to sign me after they saw me.
Is there a loyalty to Realize because they gave you that chance? Now the CD has caught on to Grammys, and now you have a podcast through them. Is your second album, The 50 Shades of 50, through them as well?
Yeah,
okay.
Absolutely.
Okay. Are these albums available on your website? Because I don't know if they are. I don't think I saw.
You know what? They're not. I should probably do that. I don't. I know they're available on their website. I should.
Because I know they sell. I mean, the shows you've done, you sell all the CDs, or at least most of them, at the end of the show or whatever that we've done. So.
I should.
You've got a few hours in the morning that you could.
I know. I should. I'm not very good at marketing myself or anything. I don't know. I need somebody to help me.
Busy.
He's busy. Yeah.
So where do you get melting snowman? Because that's such a great analogy. I mean, was that your idea, or did your kids shout at you, try to be mean and shout that at you or something?
There was a snowman. I will never forget. My girls did, and this was pre-comedy. This was way pre-comedy, but I'll never forget. They built a snowman in the backyard, and they put boobs on it. And they were like, ha, ha, ha. And then it started, as it started going, I'm like, oh my God, it looks like me. And of course, everybody was in hysterics because I've got the pale skin and all of that. And I can still see the snowman in my mind's eye that the girls built.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. And then also, last thing I want to touch on is that you do, and I don't think this is something that you normally do as a way of doing comedy is you talk about the rectal exam, and then you do a misdirection with the teeth cleaning. So you tell me everything's based on true experiences. Did that happen at a dentist's office? Was there very naughty things happening?
Not happen.
Oh, okay.
No. But I joked with the dental hygienist about it.
Okay.
Like, because I was like, well, thank God. Everybody else wants to look at my rectum. Thank you for that. Yes. So it was based on, you're right, that did not actually happen.
Okay. All right. So it's amazing to me how in this specific set, we don't have to talk about the origin of each one, but you mentioned the underwear, the muffin top, the melting snowman, algebra, the rectal exam, peeing when there are just so many jokes. Is this all the notebook you just had? Can you hold it up again? Is this like a college ruled
This is a new notebook. That would have been in an older notebook.
Is that notebook specific to your writing style? Like, I need to have like that college kind of notebook with like, it's not a spiral, it's not.
No, I just like this is from pre-2017, and then starting in February. No, I just have blank books. Somebody gifted me that, like a student of mine had given me this with a little mug that matches. Another one that I'm using was one that Jeremy had gotten at a convention that he went to. So no, I don't have any ritual things like that. When I was performing as a singer, I had to have a certain kind of cough drops. I had to have certain highlighters to highlight. All of that stuff. With comedy, I'm much looser.
Okay. Okay. And so the joke, Jeremy, I want to kind of talk about again real quick is the joke that you talk about with Missy and being married to an older woman. How did you get that joke? How did you get that joke taking? Because you're living with. That joke. I'm assuming you guys were dating at this point. I think you guys weren't married. So how do you write a joke about someone that you're dating and then have it be that good? Do you worry about what Missy is thinking when you talk about the life alert and all this stuff?
Congratulations! Marriage is awesome, man. I'm so happy that I got married. Like, I love my wife. We've almost been married 1 year. We got one more month until we celebrate our first wedding anniversary, and I love her to death. The thing is, my wife is a little bit older than me. My wife is 13 years older than I am. I know, lucky girl, right? So when we first started dating, my friends were like, hey man, she's 13 years older than you. Isn't that like kind of awkward? I'm like, no, it's not awkward. Except for when she starts her sentences with, when I was your age. That's weird. And I wanted to do something special this year for Christmas, right? It was our first Christmas married. I wanted to get her something meaningful, something beautiful. So I got her this wonderful gift. And here's the thing. She opened it up on Christmas morning, took one look at it, threw it across the room, stormed out of the house. And I can't figure out to this day where I went wrong. It was this beautiful necklace. Came down to like right about here, and it had this beautiful little pendant up the bottom, and it said right across top, it said, life alert.
You worry at all? Okay.
The thing, and that's the thing, is that Missy is what made it okay for me to write those jokes. Because when we first started dating each other, immediately we were laughing about the difference in our ages.
Okay.
She's older than I am, I'm shorter than she is. We'd laugh about all of the differences. And because of that, it led to these jokes about, well, how can I compare this in the most absurd way possible? And you just start brainstorming these ideas. A couple of those Missy wrote.
Okay. The Life Alert? Who did Life Alert?
I think that was Missy.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
We go over this stuff together. We bounce ideas off each other, but I think some of these ideas came out of her mouth.
Okay. And what about then the reality show mashup? Because that's very creative. The way that you are able to marry.
Day one.
So tell me, I think the joke involves between 6 and 8 different reality shows that you mentioned. Do you watch reality shows? Like, how did you, or did like, hey, this works with these two that I know. I'm going to start going through like a Wikipedia article and seeing which ones I can marry. How did you genesis that joke?
I wrote that joke during my first marriage.
Okay.
And my ex-wife, she loved watching reality shows. And we'd always watch TV together at night, and I used to, I started despising reality shows. They're not real. You know, that concept always bothered me. These reality shows aren't real. They're scripted. It's very upsetting. And I was, you know, in my head, I'd just be like, you know, well, this show's stupid because of this reason. This show's stupid because of this reason. And I was like, well, what if they're both stupid because of this reason? I just matched it together. So I've actually been telling that joke for like 7 years.
Okay. And that's a great segue into both a question. Missy, you've done 2 albums. Jeremy, have you put out anything like this? Okay. How do you guys know when something is final? Like Jeremy, are you someone like Jay Leno who's like, I'm never giving it away? Or is there like, if I hit an hour I feel comfortable with, I'm just going to tape or I'm going to record it and that's going to be a new CD. How do you guys know when these jokes are final and then you throw them in the trash? When do you guys know that?
Michelle, the producer at the label, is the one that said, this is good, let's put it out there. If I went on my own instincts, I'd never record anything because I never think anything's good enough.
Okay.
But I'm always prompted by somebody else. I'm never that confident in it.
Okay. And Jeremy, is there ever a time that you would release your jokes for public listening?
If I got a good recording of them, absolutely. My problem is that, I don't know if you've experienced this, but every time I purposefully record a set, something goes awry and the footage just sucks. Somebody's talking in the audience, I screw up a joke, and then times I don't bring a camera, I ace it. So I'm like, you know, I'm done. I like live performance. It's the most important thing to me. I'm done bringing a camera that's going to jinx it. If one happens to catch it someday, great. Otherwise, I'm there for those people in front of me.
And see, I got lucky because my shows for recording were set up by the label, right?
Okay.
I didn't have anything. So I didn't make any of the arrangements. I didn't do any of that. I didn't do any of the editing or the sound. It was like, hey, Missy, this is the date. This is the theater. Here's what we're gonna do. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So, because it's right. Because now when I try to get just clips, like Jeremy's saying, and you know, there'll always be somebody's head in there, or whatever.
Yeah.
Like I can't get the clip for submissions to save my life.
Yeah.
I had to rely on myself, but this was a show specifically for recording, so that was
Now, Missy, since I'll ask this question to you, because you have between the two of you like a physical thing that your jokes are contained in, which is the notebook. Is that notebook important to you? If I were to tell you once you die, your daughter's just going to throw it in the trash, does that upset you? Or would you want her to, like, hey, I've put so much work into this, I want her to hold on to... No. Okay, so that thing...
Oh,
okay.
No.
Maybe we'll make it into the world of comedy in New York. Maybe we'll make it up there one day.
Wouldn't that be funny? Yeah, it's funny. That would be so cool, but I don't really think... I'm like, oh, yeah, no, it's a notebook.
Okay, I was just curious. What is the next step for both you guys? What's the next achievable, not milestone, like is it another album? Is it a festival? Is it, I want to perform on the West Coast? Is there like a goal that you guys set this year that obviously with COVID that kind of derailed a lot of stuff, but was there a step, you're like something that I have not done before that this is the next step I want to take kind of deal? Is it another movie?
We each, that's an individual goal for ourselves. So like, as there's individual goals and then there's kind of comedy couple goals. Like the podcast that we're doing was a goal for us and we're achieving that right now. We'd really like to do some stuff on camera, just like we do on our podcast.
Okay.
So, and I'm not going to say reality show because I just said, we'd like to get some stuff on film.
Okay.
I got into Burbank Comedy Festival. That's going to be virtual, and Big Pine is supposed to be still going on. We'll see in Arizona. But a big thing for me this year was I want to do more just videos to blow out, and I'm finally learning how to use Premiere Pro.
She's good at it.
I'm having fun with it. And that to me, I think in a time where we're realizing that just live performance isn't sustainable, I've been trying to really develop another skill set and get to more writing.
Okay.
Things. Sure.
Okay.
Cool.
And my goal, hopefully, hopefully I can get a few more auditions for some stuff on the West Coast, but we'll see.
Missy, I have a question for you. If I could guarantee you like a 10-picture deal plus Broadway, and I said the condition is you walk away from stand-up, you write for other people, would you do it?
Maybe.
Okay. Is stand-up...
Broadway?
Is stand-up...
Would I get to perform at all?
Yeah, you'd be able to perform, but it couldn't be comedy. If you're writing jokes, it'd be written for somebody else. Okay.
Yeah.
So performing is still the most important. Is stand-up a means to an end, and the end is acting?
It varies from day to day. Because when I'm doing stand-up, I absolutely love it. And if I could do that and it feels easy, right? It's just you, it's just the mic, there's no sex, it's so just ta-da. I love it. But if I gave up stand-up, if I could do film and Broadway and still write jokes, yes, that would be fine.
Okay. Questions then. I want to talk a little bit, and I'm going to link the comedy cast that you did with that Irish guy. Can't remember his name, but you mentioned you brought your daughter and about some like the awkwardness. So my question is, are there jokes that you don't write because? I mean, obviously you kind of poke fun at your relationship with your daughter, but nothing is super embarrassing about, or nothing is so out there. Or do you purposely withhold material that might down the road 10 years from now when she's in her 30s or parent herself might be embarrassed that's on YouTube or something like that? Do you consciously stay away from stuff like that could be?
It's interesting. When I first started, she was mortified because my album showed up on Pandora and when she was in middle school, and her friends saw it, and there were a couple of things about her, and then she was just furious. But of course she was a teenager, so she was pissed off when I said good morning. So I was kind of like now that she's an adult, when I have some material because that I think could push a button, I run it by her to ask her how she feels about it. Okay. Like for instance, with the 30-year-old boyfriend with the neck tattoo and a couple of the things of her wanting to be a minister and all of that, I've told her about ways that I want to make fun of it. And I was like, but I won't, it's not important enough to me. And she's like, no. She's like, Mom, it's funny. It doesn't, she appreciates me being asked. But we kind of have a policy that we don't post any film, video, or jokes about any of us that don't kind of get permission for first.
Okay. And so going along with that, let's plug your podcast, The Hallway. Where did the record label come to you and be like, we see you guys posting on Facebook, let's get this on audio, or was this an idea you proposed to them about doing?
Well, I had wanted to do a podcast, and we were getting a lot, what we noticed and same with the label would notice, I would post conversations like he said this, I said this, and then he would do the same thing, and people thought we were funny together, and it was kind of like, you should do a podcast. And we're like, well, yeah, we should do a podcast, and that's how it came up.
Okay. Now,
they lit the fire on.
They lit the fire, because as I told you, I'm not good at putting it out there.
Motivation.
Yeah.
So I noticed that the last podcast you had was in late June. I would thought with maybe being in quarantine that there would just be so many episodes. You guys would just be doing this every day for something to do. Is there a reason that it seems to be somewhat monthly or bi-monthly at this point, or twice a month? I'm not sure if that's the bi-monthly means, but okay.
It's not Mr. Lazy. My day job is going through serious changes.
I know what you do, and I know you kind of keep that secret, so I'm not going to bring it up. I can only imagine what your line of work is like right now.
Oh, yeah. No, it's not a secret. I work in the travel industry, and it's...
Is it mostly cruise lines, though? Don't you work with cruise? Yeah.
Mostly with, and so, we're being financially pained right now.
Yeah.
And a lot of changes. It's not 9 to 5 work anymore. It's when something needs to get done, it gets done. So it's just been kind of hard to.
I see.
And that's one of the things where the last thing I'll be coming on. Okay, let's record. And like I was telling you, I can go from 0 to turning it on and be fine. And Jeremy is like, no, I'm just not there as a person tonight, which I respect that too.
Okay.
And there's also depression going on right now too. You know. If when we record, I'd like I'd like us both to be in a good mindset. During this pandemic, during my issues with work, it's kind of a sad
Yeah.
time. Not always in the mood to do
Yeah,
something.
I think you guys mentioned that as a disclaimer for your last episode, was that it didn't
Yeah.
feel right to be funny at that current time, so you're
Right.
taking a break. Yeah. Okay.
Right.
And a
Now,
lot of what we do is based on feel. You know, it's all honesty, so it's based on feel. And I haven't been feeling much.
And especially because we don't plan what we're going to say either.
Mhm.
Right.
You know, so it is, so I'll be like, can you, and I'm terrible. I'll be like, you, the poor guy will be beaten down. I'll be like, oh, you can't do 20 minutes. I'm just asking for 20 minutes. I'm a horrible person.
My career is about to go down the
I'm
toilet.
like, will you sit down with me and talk? You know, I can be a little bit of a jerk in that regard.
Thank you very much again for your time. I really appreciate it.
Thanks for having us, Mark. It's fun.
Thank
Very
you.
good. It's good to see you.
Yes, it's good to see you guys
I
too.
always told Missy, and
Yes.
Missy will confirm.
Yes,
What's up?
you're his favorite. He's like, I
Oh, thank you.
love shows with Mark. He's like, I would go to any show just to be able to laugh with Mark. He
Oh.
laughs harder with you than
Okay.
anybody.
When I talk to you off stage,
Yeah.
it's just us or even with a group of people, it is my favorite thing.
Oh, that
It
means
is.
a lot. That touches me. Thank you very much, Jeremy.
Yeah.
Missy, what's your compliment for me now? Well, that means a lot. No,
Absolutely delightful.
well, you guys are just so nice. I mean, you know, I know you guys do shows that I'm on, and you guys, you've asked me to do shows that you guys put on, and it's always a good experience. It's never weird. It's never awkward. It's never like, I mean, it's never like we're in a situation where. So that's.
Like, you're trying to create something, and it's fun to get to be a part of it.
Well,
right?
thank
I don't
you.
necessarily- Yeah. No.
Thanks for inviting us to
Yes.
your creativity.
Oh,
Yes.
no problem. I appreciate you guys doing it. I think a part of the reason that we do comedy, I feel that there is a sadness with all comedians, and there is a need to, because of whatever happened in their life, there's a need to go on stage and get approval from other people. I think there's that need, and so I appreciate you guys doing it. I want to talk a little bit about MissyHallComedy.com. Where you can find your tour schedule, videos, the news thing's a great feature, because that's where I went for most of my information. When you had these articles and the comedy cast was on there, I think that's great. Although the link for the comedy cast was not on there. I had to Google comedy cast to get to the interview with the Irish guy. But what benefit do you see from the website? Have people reached out to you for shows on the website?
Yes. Yes, people have reached out, and my agent also refers people to the website
Okay.
when he's trying to submit me for auditions for things. So,
Okay.
yes.
Okay.
So I feel like it's just a necessary thing to have.
Okay. And Days of Power is on Amazon Prime, and I highly encourage people to watch it. It's a very different side of Missy. So anyone who can see how you'd be a great actress, the fact that you are a completely different person in that movie.
Hey, you don't live with her, Mark.
I mean, you do got to suffer through Riccadonna in order to see Missy, but it's. But it's a great horror movie. It really is, and the dog aspect. There's there's a theme. There is a message to it with
Right.
animal abuse and puppy mills, which is a great way of also doing a horror movie, because it's real life horror versus then the pretend stuff as well. Is there a movie coming up, maybe? Is there talks about another movie? Is there talks about a movie about yourself, a independent, self-produced? I mean, you obviously talked about your story, 2 marriages, controlling a daughter, you married another comic. Is there, I know you said a one-woman play, but is there like, hey, let's film this and see what we can do?
Yeah, that there is. And the thing is it's hard to say that without sounding narcissistic.
That's
like,
fine.
oh, look at me, it's so fascinating. I don't mean it in that way. I would like anything that I do to be a funny / and with sad moments of showing people, and women in particular, and men, and it would apply to some men as well, and men who love their women and all of that. It's like we can have a life that was not what we expected, and we can be who we didn't mean to be for a little while, but you can actually still end up okay. And some of it is ridiculous.
Yeah.
Like, because one of the things, I want to like what I would address in a movie or thing is like, I did not know what to wear to go see my then husband in the psychiatric ward, so that they would know that I wasn't what drove him crazy. Right? These were real thoughts in my head, but I'm like, that could be played out with a character in a funny way, and I think it could make people feel better. That's the only way I could do it. I don't think I'm a fascinating enough person that there should be a movie made on my behalf.
Yeah.
But some of the experiences I had. There's Dennis.
Hi, Dennis. I think what is fascinating is the love story, because there had to be so many bad things that happened in your life.
Yes.
I mean, if Jeremy never is in a band, never is in New York, never becomes a bartender, never gets addicted, if you never married two guys, if you don't have a daughter and then a stepdaughter, you guys would never met each other. Jeremy could have ended up in Oregon, Portland, Oregon. You could have ended up in Mexico.
I will always say that everything that happened in my life led to the best ending possible.
Yes.
And I'm totally cool with that. No matter all the crap I did and went through, totally worth it.
Okay.
Same here. And it's been fun to end up in quarantine together, because we're like, what if this had happened in other chapters of our lives? Like, we're so lucky.
Yeah. Well, thank you guys again. Thank you guys very much again. Thank you for letting me get like 2 hours out of your day, and hopefully I'll see you soon. Hopefully.
Yeah, I would love to see you soon.
Yes.
And keep the baby and Laura for us.
I will. Take care, guys. Love you both.
Bye-bye.
See ya.
All right, that's it. That's our interview with the Halls. Make sure you tune into the Hallway podcast. It's truly a great podcast. Like them on Facebook. They're always coming out with hilarious videos every week. Get Missy's albums, both Misrepresentation and 50 Shades of 50. Go see Jeremy and Missy in any comedy club in the area. It's a show not to be missed. Please, again, subscribe to this episode and like the episode and everything else that you can do to promote this. I need whatever I can get here. So thank you so much, and we'll see you next Monday with a new episode of Get to the Joke. Take care.